and assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel Passionate PT. Today I'm going to describe the second part of the urinary incontinence. Now in my previous video, in part 1, I've explained about the mechanism or the phenomena of stress incontinence. Now I will explain that how you can help the patient with the stress incontinence and which rehabilitation option a physical therapist can adopt to deal with this issue. So as I've explained, in the stress incontinence there is weakness of the pelvic floor muscle and external urethral sphincter muscles. So you need to strengthen both of these muscles to help patient prevent the dribbling and incontinence. First of all, how to strengthen the pelvic floor muscle. Now, before adopting any of the strengthening procedure, you need to evaluate that how much of the strength is left with the patient. To assess the strength of the muscles of the patient before rehabilitation, we use an equipment or apparatus that is known as the perineometer. Perineometer helps to assess the strength of the pelvic floor muscles. Now, once you have assessed the strength of the pelvic floor muscles, what you do, if the pelvic floor muscles are very weak, in other words, if they are less than grade 3, now you can understand that the patient is unable to perform the anti-gravity pelvic floor muscle contraction. So you will start with you will start to strengthen the pelvic floor muscle in supine position. Okay, you will start in the supine position. Now this, if muscles are very weak, so you will start in gravity eliminated position, that is supine position. Now this supine position will give the patient more of the sense of proprioception, that will make the patient aware of the muscles, their performance, their contractions. So it will help more to increase the proprioception. Then as the strength of the pelvic floor muscle becomes better, then you can progress to other position, like you can progress to the side lying position, to long sitting position, and finally when the patient gains good strength, you can then go to the standing position. In very advanced stages, the pelvic floor strengthening is done in during running on the treadmill. Now, how to strengthen the pelvic floor muscle? These are the positions which we have discussed. So starting with the very weak muscles in supine position, what you have to tell the patient that he or she needs to lift his or her the pelvic floor muscle upward and inward towards the umbilicus, you can say, towards the navel, towards the umbilicus. The patient has to lift his or her pelvic floor muscle. Now in the layman language, you can ask the patient, train the patient to just contract your muscle the way you try to hold your urine. Okay, it's like make yourself feel that you're trying to hold the urine and hold it, then release it, hold it, and then release it. Now this is the way you strengthen your pelvic floor muscles. Now, how to strengthen the external urethral sphincter muscles. Now, external urethral sphincter muscle strengthening is a bit different from the pelvic floor muscle strengthening. This external urethral sphincter muscle strengthening is done while the patient is sitting in the restroom or on the toilet seat. Okay, you tell the patient, now external urethral sphincter muscles are more composed of the type 1 fibers, that are the fibers for muscle fibers for endurance, for long standing contraction. So in strengthening of external urethral sphincter muscle, you focus more on the hold rather than the repeated contraction to improve the endurance. Okay, so you start by letting the patient sit on the toilet, and the procedure is almost the same, that you ask the patient to hold the urine and then release it. In the beginning, you will keep the hold ratio less than of the rest ratio. Okay, you ask the patient to hold for 1 second and then take rest for 4 or 5 seconds. Okay, and as you progress you increase the hold time and decrease the rest time. You will then go to 1:3, then 1:2, and then 1:1. That means if the patient is holding for 2 seconds, he'll take the rest for 2 seconds. Okay, so 1:1, as the strength of the external urethral sphincter muscle increases, you also increase the hold time. Now this is something you can do with the muscles of grade 2 or the muscles who are able to perform the gravity eliminated contraction. But there is another option. If the muscles are really very weak, like they are not even able to perform the gravity eliminated contraction, then the option left is EMG biofeedback. Okay, electromyographic biofeedback. In this, the electrodes are placed on the muscles at a distance, and sensitivity of the biofeedback is kept high, and if so that the smallest of the contraction which the patient is having can be seen by the patient, that encourages the patient to contract more, and as the strength progresses we lower the sensitivity of the biofeedback. So EMG biofeedback can be used for the strengthening of very weak muscles. So this is about stress incontinence. Now let's get to the second type, and that is urge incontinence. Urge incontinence is something mostly related to a pathology as compared to the stress incontinence, in which mostly there is weakness of the muscles or increase in intra-abdominal pressure. The urge incontinence is related with it can be systemic pathology or it can be localized to the bladder. Now what happens in the urge incontinence, that the bladder becomes hypersensitive, hyperreflexive. Now what is meant by hypersensitive and hyperreflexive? That as soon as the urine comes to the bladder, as soon as the bladder receives even a small amount of the urine, even if it's not partially filled, it due to its higher sensitivity and due to being hyper reflexive, it tries to eliminate the urine very fast, okay, very quickly. So this bladder so the patient is not able to control that contraction, even not the external urethral sphincter. This bladder is very hyperreflexive and spastic. Okay, it contracts and releases the urine. Now inability to delay voiding due to hyperreflexive or hypersensitive bladder. And in which situation this occurs mostly? For example, the patient with the spinal cord injury, patient with the traumatic brain injury can have this, and the patient with the upper motor neuron disorder can have the spastic hyperreflexive bladder. I have explained in the video in my video of types of bladder, that how many types of the bladder can exist with the stroke patient. So upper motor neuron bladder, in which there is increase in spasticity, this can also occur. Also it can occur in the patient with the multiple sclerosis, and it can also occur if there is any infection, inflammation, there is bladder cancer, or there is any stone. This can lead to increase in the urgency and frequency of the urination. Okay, so partially filled bladder also pushes the urine out of the bladder. Okay, so this release of the urine is so fast that it does not even let the patient to reach the restroom, to reach the washroom, and urine just comes out of the bladder, and that has a very bad socio-economic effects. Now again, how to help with the patient with the urge incontinence? You can In the urge incontinence, the option you can use is your EMG biofeedback. Now again, in the EMG biofeedback, how we can use this, can be used to really to reduce the spasticity of the detrusor muscle of the bladder. If we use the low sensitivity in the EMG biofeedback, by using the low sensitivity, the muscle is fatigued early, and fatigue muscle and when the muscle is fatigued, there is reduction in the spasticity, and by doing this again and again, the spasticity is reduced with time, and the urge, the frequency of the urge is also reduced. So this is how you can help the patient with the urge incontinence. Now we have, okay, we keep sensitivity low to fatigue the muscle, which will decrease the spasticity. Now next we have overflow incontinence. Now contrary to the urge incontinence, the bladder in the overflow incontinence is flaccid. Okay, when the urination is performed by the patient, because the bladder is flaccid, that can happen in the bladder with the lower motor neuron lesion, and that can happen in the diabetes, in the spinal cord injury, again lower motor neuron lesion or spinal cord injury, and that can also occur in the multiple sclerosis. Now multiple sclerosis patient can have both the upper motor neuron or spastic bladder, and can also have the lower motor neuron or the flaccid bladder. Now what happens, the bladder detrusor muscle is flaccid, it does not contract enough to completely empty the bladder from the urine, so there is incomplete emptying. That is why some of the urine is left within the bladder, and when the patient is done with the urination, that remaining urine keeps on dribbling out of the bladder. Now as this happens again with most of the patient having the serious pathologies, so they are not able to overcome it. Okay, so this is what happens in the overflow incontinence. How? Again, in the overflow incontinence, we use the EMG biofeedback. What we do, we because the muscle is flaccid and weak, so we use the electrodes with the high sensitivity to help the muscle perform better, and in some situation the only option that is left is catheterization. Okay, we use the indwelling catheter for the patient. I've also explained in my previous video of types of bladder that which catheters you can use for such patient. Now next is the functional incontinence. What happens now, functional incontinence is very simpler type, which I think is a simpler type of the incontinence. In functional incontinence, simply there is no issue with the bladder, there is no issue with the urine path, the micturition reflex, but where the problem is that the patient is unable to perform because of his or her physical limitation. Now there can be lower extremity fracture, there can be paralysis, and there can be the patient is mentally unwell, patient has dementia, patient has any other Alzheimer's disease, or the patient is mentally not normal to understand the phenomena of the urination. So any pathology or any limitation that makes the use of the restroom not possible, that is called as functional incontinence. So for functional incontinence, we simply help the patient to modify his or her lifestyle. For example, the patient with the rheumatoid arthritis or even osteoarthritis, they are unable to go and use the restroom. We modify their daily life by using the bedside commodes, by giving them assistive devices or any other thing that can help them to use the restroom or make the place favorable for urination. So this is functional incontinence. Now the last type is the mixed incontinence. The mixed incontinence is is something that happens when the person is having both the stress and the urge incontinence together. And so in this you use the management that you use for both the stress and urge incontinence. So both management strategies you need to use in this, the mixed on incontinence. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Take care. Bye bye.